Hello, welcome to Joy News Desk. Coming up, Joy News investigations reveal how staff of the Ghana Revenue Authority and businesses bidding for contracts circumvent laid down procedures in the acquisition of tax clearance certificates. We'll bring you details. Our Special Prosecutor Kissie Jabeng drops case brought against Boku Central MP Mama Yariga by his predecessor Martin Amidu, arguing it will be a waste of the state's time.
That was the first one. That was the first one. This had to do with
the pictures
mainly,
over there.
This had to do mainly with
Cardinal Peter Piateksin says some Ghanaian leaders are conniving with foreigners to loot the nation's resources without recourse to the implications of their actions.
He says it is greed, selfishness. Okay, get whatever we get at whatever cost.
My name is Israelite. Do stay tuned in for the right. Time now for the details of our stories. And Joy News investigations have uncovered how some staff of the Ghana Revenue Authority aid businesses bidding for contracts to circumvent laid-down procedures in the acquisition of tax clearance certificates. With a paltry sum of 1,500 cedis, officials are able to forge tax records for newly created companies without any evidence of work. Joy News' Kwete Nate has more in the following report.
I have received countless information that contractors and business owners fake tax clearance certificates so they can bid for government contracts. So I set out to verify the authenticity of this claim. I began by registering a company called Basket Ports. Barely a week after the company became official, I set out to get a tax clearance certificate, even though my company had no tax record. Before we get into the detail of how I managed to get a forged tax clearance certificate, which could pass off as authentic, the head of Domestic Tax Office, Edward Jamra, explains why a tax clearance certificate is important.
It's a compliance tool, which is used by the Ghana Revenue Authority to ensure that a taxpayer who pays that has complied with its list of tax obligations.
With the explanation out of the way, I approached a Ghana Revenue Authority staff who worked with another tax officer at the Agbogloshi GRE office and was asked to pay a sum of 1,500 cedis. I told them I needed a good turnaround tax record, and they secured a tax clearance certificate covering 3 years. The certificate reads, "Provisionally not liable to tax, deposit 500 cedis. This should help the investigative team to secure a government contract with ease."
a tax certificate that has a good turnaround.
I don't get you. You said?
They need a tax certificate that has a history that I've done some job. Done a zero tax certificate. Would I have to pay all at once or I can make down payment?
No.
Okay, I need to pay all at once.
No number you should be.
And if I pay, how long will it take for me to?
And that time it
Then maybe
for
next
now,
week.
I'll send it. I'll send it. The office, I'll send it to them. So
Then maybe next week
at
I'll
least
bring
by
the money.
Monday or Tuesday to be ready.
Oh, okay. Then
It
maybe.
will all depend on you.
The certificate was prepared within 3 days.
Baby, I made it back on. Only you certificate. And then at least my 1,000 now. The big
So let's see Tuesday.
Okay.
So Tuesday I would have to come.
Oh, you don't need to come. If it's ready, you can memo it to me.
Okay, no problem.
Head of the Domestic Tax Office, Edward Jamra, says the practice is fraudulent. He explains why.
A new company cannot. So if you have a clearance certificate for a new company, which is indicating that
Preliminary investigations by the GRA reveal the tax detail of tax clearance are genuine, but another fact is that they were forged. The head of the Domestic Tax Office says they will investigate further to establish the details of the individuals behind the act.
We will be happy to investigate to find out how this tax clearance certificate was issued to the company. And if we find out that it was done fraudulently, we will use necessary sanctions to
So although I did not qualify for a tax clearance certificate, some GRA staff have helped me circumvent the system and have put me in a good light to bid for a government contract.
And other problem too is that now because we are short of certificates, but some of the offices, they have it. Those who work on that schedule.
It is clear, beating the system in Ghana comes at a price. So what is your price tag? Kwetinatis reports for Joy News.
All right, so joining us for this conversation, for more on this, is Adam Senanu, anti-corruption campaigner. Good morning to you, Adam. So does this surprise you at all?
No, it doesn't. I think that we've gotten to a stage where a lot of this is normalized. It seems to have become a subculture. If you see the demeanor of the lady, she probably saw herself as what do we say? Not a knight in shining armor, someone helping a brother out.
Doing a favor.
Doing a favor, exactly. It's not surprising. We seem to have created a new subculture that has normalized these activities. It is only if you have a very strong internal monitoring system that penalizes these kinds of attitudes and actions very strongly, then it would have served as a deterrent, but I'm not really surprised.
All right, you talk about strong monitoring mechanisms. You'd expect that the GRA, the Ghana Revenue Authority, would have something like that in place, knowing that, as you're saying, this is something that's quite common.
Yes, and it's probably something that Kweti or anybody else can try and check, because you see, the only way you're going to stop anyone in a monolithic organization of this size, it's a very huge organization, for not taking advantage of the position they have. I mean, that's the classic definition of corruption, the abuse of entrusted power for personal gain. So you have some power to do something and you take advantage of it, which is what has happened in this instance. The only way to stop that is that you have systems that say we will penalize you, and not just that, you are seen to penalize frequently, so that it serves as a deterrent. People begin to know that you are not afraid to crack the whip. And so from historical evidence, they know that this might happen to me, and therefore I don't want to attempt going down that road. Without the evidence that has been going on, there's monitoring and there's been sanctions of individuals who've done this, the likelihood is that this kind of activity will continue.
So many people will look at the amount involved. 1,500 cedis was paid to get the tax clearance certificate, and they'll say, so what? The person stole at 1,500 cedis. It's chicken change compared to the corruption cases that we hear. But help us to appreciate the implications of someone paying 1,500 cedis to get a tax clearance certificate they don't deserve.
In the first place, from the individual's perspective, you tend to start with small amounts. It could be, in this case, I think that the report suggests that at least 500 was recorded. So let's say it's 1,000.
Yes.
But once individuals get comfortable, the next time it will be 2,000, and there might be an exponential growth before you know it. Then that person is involved working with others to deprive the state of much more. So that's one aspect of it. The fact that if you're not holding on to the small drops, you are likely to be creating a bigger hole for monies to be lost to the state. But beyond that, the implications simply are that that culture of I can get away with not paying what I should, or I can get what I don't deserve simply by passing a little bit of currency here and there, will begin to seep into the whole culture. So everybody thinks that it's about how much you're able to pay. And so there's a constant competition, so to speak, to deprive the state to get contracts that are not due us. And once you get that kind of contract, because already you are not the kind of individual who follows systems and procedure and protocols, the likelihood is that even if you got a genuine government contract to execute, you are likely to provide a substandard product. If it's a road, then the likelihood is that the resources given to you to execute that road will not be spent to develop a high quality road that will stand the test of time. It's supposed to be 10 years or 20 years, So that culture feeds into the full value chain. It starts from just the fact that I got my tax clearance by the wrong way. Then I push money to get a contract the wrong way. It probably means that nobody has checked that you have the systems, you have the personnel, you have the capacity to deliver. At the end of the day, the people of Ghana are shortchanged. You have more accidents on the road and what have you, or building collapses or whichever contract substandard quality products are provided. So it's a long value chain. Starting with this just means that nobody is checking that entity that has received the tax clearance has systems in place, has the capacity, has the expertise to deliver on the services that they claim they are about to provide.
Right, hold on for me, Mr. Senanu. I've been joined by Joe Winford, who's board chairman of the Internal Audit Agency. Good morning to you, Mr. Winford. So I've just been speaking with Edem Senanu, who is with the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Now, he talks, makes reference to the fact that what we've seen shows that there's a lack of, proper mechanisms, monitoring mechanisms to check some of these things. What do you make of it as chairman of board chair of the Internal Audit Agency?
Well, I think he's right. Yes, most of the time when we put in procedures or systems, we have to ensure that we've included in those procedures the checks and balances, which refers to the control mechanisms that will need to be put in place. Absence of such control mechanisms or the non-compliance of the control mechanisms will result in, what you are seeing today.
All right, so what do we do as, board chairman of the Internal Audit Agency? I want to believe that putting the mechanisms in place will fall within your ambit, right?
Yes, I mean, that is the whole essence. It's risk management, including ensuring that there are effective controls within the public sector and so on.
So why is that missing?
Oh, it's a long story.
We're interested in the short story.
For the simple reason that the Internal Audit Agency, which has been in existence for some time, has not been very effective. And that is as a result of the absence of independence and professionalism by the agency staff. Because the law setting up the Internal Audit Law 203, 658, structured it in such a way that the internal audit units are actually controlled by those that they are supposed to be checking. That is, if it's an MDA or MMDA, the auditor, the internal auditor, actually reports to the chief executive. So you can imagine coming up with a report or a negative report about the organization or the institution of which the boss is the one who is responsible, I mean, you know that it becomes humanly impossible to have your peace of mind as the internal audit unit. So that is what has been identified as a big loophole in the whole process or system. So the internal audit, as you see it today, is being restructured. Now, in order to carry out the restructuring effectively, we've got to have that law repealed. And they are now in the process. It will have to go to the cabinet, and then from there it will go to Parliament for repeal of that Act 658. Other than that, it's going to be very difficult because the internal audit staff will have to be very independent, fearless, and then objective. Now, that has been absent to a large extent. And that is why these, loopholes are still in, and the compliance is weak and the rest of it. So it's going to take some time after approval of the law or approval of the repeal that you're going to see a different or a more, and strengthened internal audit agency that will deliver what is expected of it.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Senanu, so I've just heard the board chair of the Internal Audit Agency just make the point that essentially there's an internal audit agency that is not effective because of the structure that's been put in place. Isn't this symptomatic of many government agencies where people have been appointed, they're supposed to be working, but they are unable to carry out that work? For most of the agencies, it's probably because they don't have the resources to get the work going, and yet they are in place and they are being paid. So that an internal audit agency, which is supposed to check, waste and corruption and all of that, just sits there and the staff are paid and nothing comes out of it. Mr. Senanu, isn't that a problem that's across not just the Internal Audit Agency, but many government institutions right now?
Absolutely right. I mean, that's an incisive observation. Part of it is simply the policy and legal chaos where often we've not thought through our policies very well, or even if we have, we seem to leave policy as static when it's supposed to be dynamic, changing with changing times and coming abreast with the changing circumstances of the people. So there's one point, and that's part of the challenge he describes here, where the law ought to be changed and the speed with which we can do that. The other jurisdictions where the speed of changing policy is faster. Public policy is supposed to be dynamic. But our jurisdiction, it tends to be static, and the changes we need to make to ensure that systems work and deliver the results that we want appears to be very slow. Beyond that is just the public cake and how much resources get to these institutions, even when they have good policies for implementation or execution. And I am happy in one sense that we see that we see the tying of the Ghana card to a lot of the various services, because I see that it's going to make a monumental difference in terms of domestic revenue mobilization. And that's key to expanding our resource envelope. And hopefully, if we are allocating, not just on paper, but in fact, as it were, disbursing to these entities so that the personnel can work, we'll have much more results for the manpower that we have put in place. So yes, that's an incisive observation.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Adam Senan, who's co-chair Citizens Movement Against Corruption. But I want to come to you, Mr. Joe Wainful, to wrap it up. What the Ghana Revenue Authority has indicated that this matter is going to be thoroughly investigated, but what do you expect should be happening?
You mean, should we expect to be happening?
Saying, so they're going to investigate. But what would you recommend or what would you want to see happen in terms of sanctions?
Well, you know, it looks as if, although Mr. Senanu indicated that we seem to have cultivated this culture of saying, I'm helping someone, I'm doing a favor. As a result, you know, what is wrong with being kind to my fellow Ghanaian? Maybe that is the attitude. But even the employee should know that the essence of ensuring that we collect the revenue into the government chest and is done properly is to bring about efficiency in not only our revenue collection, but even in the processes that will follow to get to that end. Now, in the private sector, you can ask what will happen. I mean, the person will be fired as soon as it's proven that there was this intention or the motivation to actually enrich himself, because not all the amount collected was paid into the government chest.
Yes.
For you to say that circumventing the process was more of trying to help, but at the end of the day, I was trying to collect monies for the government. You know, that shouldn't be the case, because there was some of the amount apparently, you know, also ended up with the individual, which means that there was intention to really do this act. So I believe that the right punitive measure and as a deterrent to others will be to get rid of that employee. That's a bad nut. And then for all the rest to see that or to understand that they won't get away with it if they practice that. But there will be a need to, you know, review the systems in place.
Yes.
Find out the weaknesses within the control mechanisms, try and improve upon them, and then hold the senior persons also accountable, because they are the ones who are charged with actually providing oversight or supervising, and at the same time ensuring that they attain their targets through effective, you know, revenue mobilization. Because there's also a weakness within the whole process of revenue, you know, assessment and collection. And this, I don't think, is, you know, is the major issue at the institution. Most likely, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And maybe we can say that it's giving us the opportunity to, you know, look into, you know, the whole institution and see how best we can improve on what we are doing, because it has repercussions on our development.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Joe Winful. Joe Winful is board chairman of the Internal Audit Agency. We're moving on to another case having to do with corruption. Special Prosecutor Kisieja Jabeng has dropped a case instituted by the office against Boku Central MP Mama Yariga. The matter, initiated by his predecessor Martin Amidu, had to do with allegations of using public office for private gain. The former special prosecutor had charged Mr. Yariga and 6 others for breaching procurement processes in purchasing some ambulances for his constituency and tax evasion in the importation of some luxurious vehicles. Kisieja Jabeng says it will be a waste of the state's time and will suffer the same fate as other cases. All right, so we'll bring you that soundbite from the special prosecutor in a bit. But let's get to Joseph Akable, who has been covering this for joining us. Hello, Joseph. So what transpired? Hello, Joseph.
Hello, Israel.
Yes, so tell us.
When the case was called this morning, the special prosecutor, Kisieja, being informed Justice Sefia Saributre, the High Court judge who's hearing at this particular matter. It's the same judge who heard the one related to the importation of the ambulances, and he informed the judge that they want to discontinue the case. That is all he said in open court. And so the court granted that request and discharged him. And after that had been done, when we came out, we had our interaction with the special prosecutor, in which he explains that what he did was that he carefully reviewed the document that was available after taking office. And this particular case has to do with a car loan that was granted to Parliament. So Parliament entered into an agreement with an international bank, with a local branch here, that we're going to advance monies to MPs to buy official vehicles. Now, what they are supposed to do is that you're not supposed to take the money directly. And so you get a supplier of the vehicle who goes to the bank, and the bank transfers the money to the supplier, and the supplier delivers the car to the MP. Mr. Amidu had alleged that Mr. Ayariga connived with the supplier who went and took the money from the bank and now made the money available to the MP, who did not purchase his official vehicle, but rather bought 3 different vehicles and now sold them to the businessman who was also charged alongside the MP, that is Kendrick Murphy. Now, Mr. Ijabin says, after analyzing the evidence, if he takes the matter to court and allows it to proceed, to come to one conclusion, being that the state will not be able to prove the case against the MP. And so he has decided that he's going to discontinue this particular case.
All right, and what has been the reaction of Mr. Ayariga?
It's that of excitement. I interacted with him and his lawyer, Ebichita Maklo, and they make the point that right after Mr. Amidu's team supervised the disclosure of evidence available to them, it was clear that the evidence that was available to the special prosecutor at the time should have led them to the conclusion that the MP had not committed any crime, and that indeed it was loan that the bank had granted him, and they had already started paying for the loan. They refused to make any comments as to what they think might have influenced the SP's decision, aside from the earlier comments that they had made that it was a witch hunting that was taking place. And so it's that of excitement for him. As it stands now, there's no case pending against Mr. Ayariga.
All right, thank you very much, Joseph Akabale. But let's hear from the special prosecutor, Kisi Ejabe.
Really was the charges that was preferred against him?
Oh, there were a lot. There were several counts. About 6 of them. There were 6 of them, yeah.
But it mainly had to do with the tax evasion issues.
That was the first one. That was the first one. This had to do with
the purchase
mainly,
of.
This had to do mainly with using public office for private benefits. Most of the counts are similar like that. They answer long.
Because you are saying that after reviewing it, you think that it's not.
Not that I think. We have entered a nolle prosequi. That is to say, we've ended the case. We've discontinued it. There's no charge against Honorable assistance.
Thank you.
Moving on to other stories. Scores of residents at Oyarifa Green Hill, a community within the Quantana municipality, have been trapped in their homes more than 72 hours after heavy rains flooded the entire area. According to the affected residents, buildings in waterways and the absence of drains in the area have made it almost impossible for floodwaters to recede even days after it rains. They want authorities to order the demolition of the structures in waterways to make room for drains. Emmanuel Quarantine reports.
It's been 3 days, so
it's been 3 days and no one has gone out.
3 years.
Some residents at Oyarifa Green Hills within the La Quantana Municipal Assembly expressing their frustration as floodwaters trap them in their homes. It's been at least 72 hours after a 3-hour downpour submerged all the houses in the area. But uncharacteristic of many flooding incidents recorded in other parts of the country, the artificial pond created still stands at knee level because the water will just not recede, owing to the unavailability of gutters here. All the houses here have been flooded. People have to walk through the water. We almost had a casualty last night.
And then 3 days,
everybody is affected, with no one to help us.
But situation like this, resolving.
It's destroyed all our properties. All my fowls are dead.
The this is supposed to be a main road, and also giving a passaway by for the rain gutter, so that they can get some space for the rain to pass by. But I don't know, for some reasons there was some blockade on the road. Someone has to come and build on the road.
The community, which has more than 500 homes, has literally been shut down. Nobody goes out and nobody comes in.
Due to this, my sister cannot come back from work. Oh yeah, she went to work for almost 3 days now. She has not been in the house, and I'm the only one in the house for now. Meanwhile, I'm here with my father, my siblings, and other people. Imagine if I were not to be a little bit older, how would I be able to fend for myself in this big house?
The water cannot recede. It descends from the other parts to this place and gathers here. While the residents continue to count their losses from the invasion of their homes by the flood, they want authorities to order the demolishing of all buildings sited on the waterways. We went to NADMO and they said we should go to the assembly, but no result still. We want the president and the regional minister to help clear all the houses on the road so we can construct the gutters. It is unclear whether or not the owners of the buildings in waterways have permits to erect them there. But for the residents, another downpour which could potentially cost them more than just their properties, their very lives. Emmanuel Quarantine, Joy News.
Right, and Emmanuel Quarantine is back in the community and he joins us live with the very latest. Emmanuel, has there been any headway for the members of the community? Have the waters receded now?
Well, Israel, the only difference between the situation we have here at Oyarifa Green Hill and what was the situation 2 days ago is just an addition of 2 extra days. The water levels are still pretty much around the knee level. The people are still trapped in their homes. Over the side, I see some of the kids who are trapped in their homes, just, running about in the house, which in itself has been inundated by the water. Across this particular stretch where I have been walking through the flat waters, I see a stretch of buildings with markings of the La Nkwantana Medina Municipal Assembly, which says stop work. Well, all of those warnings, if you like, from the Municipal Assembly have fallen on deaf ears, as we're seeing steady progress of the buildings on the waterways. I'll try and through the water, get to this side where I see a few of the people who are trapped in this particular house. Just before you came to me, they're telling me about how they are having to deal with the stench from the water, which has been gathered here for 5 days without any hopes of the water receding. Also, as you can see, the pool, it's gathering, of course, and breeding mosquitoes. And with the kids in there, that fears for malaria and so on and so forth. I'll just try and quickly move out of the water now and speak to them now. Madam Pacho, good morning. Grateful that you could speak to us here on Joy News. Apologies that your situation is like this, but tell us how indeed it started and why it's like this.
That was last week, Wednesday. We're not expecting it. It was just drizzling. Then all of a sudden it became serious. Then Thursday, this is not the second time. I think this is the third time. I've been here for 2 years and I've witnessed this for, I think, 2 years now. When it rains, there's no gutter, there's nothing should be done. We'll be inside, we can't go out. We have been stuck, the children are still home. We really need help. If the state, the government can bring us pump. For now, we can't plead for gutters because it's so choke here. There's no lay to be helped to create any gutters, but we need help as pump to let the water be a little bit okay so that we can go out, we can breathe well. The scent is too much. This is what I can plead for the government to help us with.
Madam, now, since I see no better, I want us away to me pay.
The parliament to me pay. I don't want to go to Bimpo. Yes, I damn so but to the actual fence, you must not go to Adriano. Me man to be in school. Tazen nsuo nto ye no enkwa ne wo fie saa o mutimi nko school enti yesre nana ado se epa na chew o meboa yan na o munyi gota ma yan yese woni ba bia fa nsuo ni mfa ye na mu saa ye kwoto aduane kwa ye na nsuo nim ti yesra nana do se o meboa yan ne ye ne ye mobo e Ghana flag special o meboa yan.
What you heard her saying, that she's been camped here since Thursday. She's not been able to go out, and she's calling on the president and by extension authorities within the area to come to their aid. And I see some of the kids here. What's your name?
Raidoji.
Raidoji, how old are you?
12 years.
But you've not been going to school for how long? Since Thursday? That's 5 days now. How does that make you feel?
5 days.
How does that make you feel?
Bad.
You want to go to school?
Yes.
So what? How do you cross from this side to this side?
I walk in the bridge.
You walk over the bridge. Are you not scared that you may even fall into the pool of water?
I fall before.
You falling before?
Yes.
When was that?
Last week.
Last week you fell into the pool of water.
Yes.
I see. So how were you picked out of the water?
It is smelling.
And you're hearing him, and of course that gives you an indication of indeed the threat not only to their properties, even their lives here. Boss, now catch me say akorano na ekran we were saying.
The na me chlen say ne ma me betimi anase ne ma me kran fa na ma obetimi awea aba na say yadwene fle ni so obetimi atonsum asa ne ni bebe ho so no na ne makachi isu ntoye no wo scorpion emoa omokeka mitimi kumom nansa na se mikumumua wo ne niema ahodo bebre enti ema mintimi mpie because mislo se mipie a na wo pate no brands ade de na beto me ma no enti meslo omonye yemoa na yentimi solve ye problem ye problem pa isuo no wo ya to se next year esa ato abeye kase asene de aba no.
Well, he's mentioning that there are, some animals, dangerous animals within the pool of water that's gathered here for 5 days. He says that he had actually got cause to kill a snake about 3 days ago. But catch me, say MC and this is assembly and assemblyman crap who emba hanu meshe.
Obiama ha medaleta aye flana Robert Lamte. Wono na eja waye ye mo a emse opese o man payinfo na so te no mbe yefri ye hawo mu enti no ye dana se wo pepa emaye enti onkoso ano onye de oye no
at assembly na nkasa de
me hu obi a me boss Robert Lamte wono ni nipa oboaye wo sa
but den na dan na sisi hanom tumi sisi dan na si nsuo kwan mu sa
well ahanya nsuo me ba ha mo 6 years ni ahanya nsuo bet say nsuo no to kese a me fan say 2 years bia na asade we si 2 years bia we can 3 times na esi itino ya de bia ha dwen ahanya nsuo na yesisi dan block kwan no bebia be gata to nyina ya block nsuo no to a enya bebia anko first nsuo to afie kese we onya bi bet o to fence no nsuo no nyina ba beta
and so he mentions that there's not been any direct or if you like immediate response from the district assembly as in Kwantana Madina Municipal Assembly as regards dealing with the situation. He mentions also and makes reference to the buildings in the waterway. For now, as you heard one of the residents say, they are hoping that the municipal assembly will come to their aid with water pumps to essentially, suck out the pool of water that's been gathered here for the past 5 days, so that at least in the meantime they can go about their daily activities. But until that is done, Israel, the situation here is that a lot of the residents, in fact houses numbering in the hundreds, have all been caged, for want of better expressions, in their homes. Israel, if you can hear me, that's the situation here.
All right, thank you very much, Manuel, but it takes some special skill for you to be wading through a pool of water there without tumbling into it. So I'd urge you to be very careful yourself as you make your way around it. It would have been quite a sight to see you tumble in the water whilst reporting live. I've seen that happen a number of times, but do take care out there. Moving on, Peter Cardinal Apia-Texing says some Ghanaian leaders are conniving with foreigners to loot the nation's resources without recourse to the implications of their actions. According to him, the country's woes is about leadership and the insatiable desire for wealth at the nation's expense. Speaking at the Archbishop John Kojo Emisa Memorial Lecture at the St. Peter's Regional Seminary, Pedu, in Cape Coast, Cardinal Texan says the preoccupation of such leaders is to go every length to acquire wealth through the looting of state funds and engaging in activities that destroy the environment.
Texan described as unfortunate the acts that have destroyed the country's rivers, lands, and other things that could have been saved for unborn generations. He says it is greed, selfishness, and the desire of people to feel they have arrived. To him, the country's woes is about leadership and nothing else.
Not recognizing the wisdom of Edididada, Edidiprekuper. You know that proverb? Yeah? Our leaders are Edidiprekuper. Okay? Get whatever wealth get at whatever cost, and then they leave office or they leave power, and that's what it is. I know that the Chinese or whatever, some are in alliance with political figures and they do whatever type of thing and all of that. It's not only that, they're also in the thing about cutting rosewood, a whole lot of lumbering industry. So I think it's a leadership, huh? It's a question of leadership and having foresight, having the interests of the country, because this is not the first time we're doing gold mining in Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah advised that every mining, whatever, should go under the earth to get the gold and leave the surface for food production. So the trade that you talk about is not only water, it's also food. I grew up in Takwa, in Suta. There's no one place in Ghana where food is as expensive as Takwa and in Suta. Because every food has to be brought in. Because there's so much of what you're saying, I'm saying whatever type of thing that, whatever. So, it's a question of...
Relatedly, Cardinal Apia-Texan spoke about the power of the vote of the Ghanaian. He says it was time the Ghanaian considered issues when it comes to voting.
And related to that, I am also now talking about the power of your vote. It's time probably at elections to really consider issues. It's time to consider issues, okay, and to look at what we're voting for. As for it's become clear. Normally, technically, the exercise of election is to give somebody a mandate to exercise political power for your benefit and for your good. That's why. So you need somebody with power to exercise that power for the well-being of a group or a community. So people who are voted for are people who have been delegated, who should feel themselves as having been delegated. But because elections is carried on by giving gifts and monies, people, instead of election and mandate, they consider it as having bought that status. So it's no more any responsibility towards anybody for the responsibility already by giving whatever. So when they on their own, whatever. Of delegation, no sense of mandating anything. The moment that they gave people gifts and cloth and whatever type of thing to be voted for, they bought their power, they bought their status. So you can hold them to anything. So we need to change a few things ourselves if we're going to be able to exercise the power of the wallet and the power of our vote.
The Archbishop John Kojo Emisa Memorial Lecture was part of activities to mark the 90th anniversary of the St. Teresa's Minor Seminary at Emisano in Cape Coast. Richard Kwejenyako, Joy News, Cape Coast.
We're taking a break now to bring you business news to station.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to Business. My name is Darryl Kwao. Government has assured the engineering fraternity that it would continue to collaborate with them on matters related to engineering, trade, and sustainable development goals. According to the Minister for Public Enterprises, Joseph Kujo, engineers would continue to play a critical role in the development of the country and the continent as a whole. There is more in the following report.
Speaking on behalf of the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana at the 7th edition of the African Engineering Week that ends today, Mr. Kujo charged engineers to enter into the political space to influence policies and programs.
we have in place a number of initiatives which require the very strong input of engineering practitioners for success. These include the One District, One Factory initiative, which seeks to establish at least one factory in each of the 260 administrative districts of Ghana to create employment and productivity across the country. It is also aimed at stemming the rural-urban migration of the country's youth. The One Village, One Dam initiative also seeks to support agricultural production in rural Ghana, improve the sustainability of agriculture and ensure all year-round farming, and to reduce the reliance on rain-fed agriculture, which output has become very difficult to predict due to the erratic rainfall patterns.
President of the Federation of African Engineering Organizations, Engineer Khalin Boujadi, charged African governments to fund research to aid rapid development of the continent.
Bringing innovations to the market requires a system. It requires a lot more than just somebody inventing something. That's why many of our innovations end up just as prototypes and nothing else. Your education system must be right. Your patenting system must be right. You must have the funding systems ready, and so many other things. And governments especially must be prepared to fund research, because it needs very deep pockets, and it's governments that have those deep pockets that are required. We know that our young engineers need guidance when they are in the early stages of their career, and we found that our Young Engineers Forum was a very important venue for helping to develop our engineers, and they received a lot of advice that I'm sure will stand them in good stead for the future.
The theme for the conference is Engineering, Inter-African Trade and the Sustainable Development Goals.
Now, the National Petroleum Authority has frozen application of the Price Stabilization and Recovery Levy on petrol, diesel, and a kilogram of LPG for 2 months. This should mean that for the next 2 months, there will not be the application of the 16 peso per litre, 14 peso on diesel, and 14 pesos on kilogram of LPG. Here's a full statement we want to show you this morning. It says that the National Petroleum Authority wishes to inform the general public that His Excellency, the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has granted approval to zero the price stabilization and recovery levies on petrol, diesel, and LPG for a period of 2 months. The above approval follows the advice of the NPA to the Minister of Energy to seek government's intervention to mitigate the impact of rising prices of petroleum products on the world market on consumers. The statement goes on to say prices of crude oil and refined petroleum products have seen sharp increases on the world market due to a rise in demand of oil globally without a corresponding increase in supply, particularly from the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies. Because pricing of petroleum products in Ghana is deregulated, changes in prices of petroleum products on the world market have a direct impact on prices at the pumps. It says that the outlook of prices on the global market shows an upward trend, and therefore there was the need to seek government's intervention to lower the levies to cushion consumers from feeling the full impact of these rising prices. The purpose of the Price Stabilization and Recovery Levy is to stabilize prices for consumers and pay for the subsidies on premix fuel and residual fuel. At this time, it is important that the PSRL, which is currently 16 pesos per litre on petrol, 14 pesos per litre on diesel, and 14 pesos per kilogram on LPG, are zero to cushion consumers. It finally says in that statement, the NPA will work with the Ministries of Energy and Finance to quicken the legislative processes to give immediate effect to this directive by the President. And so that is some good news for the next 2 months at least. And that's business. My name
All right, it's time for sports now, and Oreko Mpofo has joined me. So the Black Stars were victorious in their their Zimbabwean counterparts on Saturday. Now they have a return. First of all, it's the credit of Milo that on the first cup of his second coming, he won. Would you say that we have a renewed Black Stars?
Yeah, I think that's the general consensus, not just within the players, but also the fans as well. And it's more about the performance. During Sika O'Connor's time, he always emphasized on the results and not necessarily on the performance. Okay. And with Milo, so far in the first game, we've seen a bit of both, with the team playing well and then winning. So I think bar conceding a goal, it was an almost perfect performance from the boys.
All right, who would you say stood out for you? The team?
I think there were quite a number of good players, but it was probably in patches. Mohamed Kudus, I think, was very brilliant in the first half. Thomas Partey was extremely influential in the second half as well. And I think some substitutes also did have a good game as well. Baba Idrissi came in and changed the game. Benjamin Tete, I felt, held that play quite well when he came on too. So it was an all-round performance, and maybe the highlight would be either Mohamed Kudus or Thomas Partey, who both go on the score sheet.
All right. Would you also say that the decision to hold on to Dede and bring him on much later on in the game paid off?
So yeah, Dede actually was in the midfield. It was a very unconventional approach. He started a younger Fatau on the right wing, and Dede was in the middle where he had to defend and all that. But the second half, we saw a bit of a change, where he moved to his much favoured right wing, and he ended up scoring from there. So I think it gives more headaches to Milovan Rajevac now, because Andre has scored and proves to you why he should be starting in a more advanced role. And so Milovan has some decisions to make heading into Tuesday's affair.
All right, and what do you make of Tuesday? Do you think it's a done deal looking at the performance on Saturday?
I called that to be able to comfortably win in Zimbabwe, you have to put fear in them when they come here. I think the Black Stars have done that. They show that there's a clear gulf in quality. And so now the Zimbabweans would not be comfortable even at their home, because they've seen what these boys can do. And so I think Ghana would be in the driving seat. It wouldn't be in a walk in the park. Of course, when you go away, there are various factors that could go against you and all that. But as things stand, Ghana has the advantage.
All right. Thank you very much, Oreko Mpofo, for bringing us the sports. And that'll be it for News Desk. I'm Jelai. Thank you very much for watching. We have JN today coming up at midday. To stay tuned. We have lots more stories. And stay tuned into the rest of our programs. Have a good day.